Good morning. I hope you're well and happy and living in peace, because that's what I'm talking about today. Many years ago, we had a number of Japanese people coming to stay in our home. A missionary in Sweden had been living in Japan and teaching them English by reading the Bible. And as they came into our home for the weekend, they were introduced, and it was quite stark, really. They were introduced, that we were told their name, and this one is a Christian. This one has just been baptized, but she's a very young Christian. I've been a Christian for a number of years. She isn't. Which was very, whoa, here we go. Anyway, we had a lovely evening and they were great people. And the next morning, I was down in the kitchen. They were all sitting around the kitchen table, and the phone rang, and it was quite an emergency. A family in our church whose husband was working away had an au pair, and the au pair had come back from, where did she live? Hungary, I think.
Hungary, that's where she lived. Yeah,
she had presented her papers at the immigration, in a passport, and they said, "How long are you planning to stay?" She knew that her passport actually was valid until the end of October or something.
Her visa was going to run out.
But it would run out. She said, I'd like to stay forever, or some remark like that. And they immediately apprehended her and shoved her into, into some sort of jail situation, really. So I had on the other end of the phone the mother of this family saying, "What on earth can I do?" She's down at Heathrow. She's absolutely in tears. They've impounded her. And, she's perfectly legal, but I don't know what to do. My husband's away, blah, blah, blah. So I listened to her, and then I prayed for her, and I told her what I would do in this situation, who I would contact on her behalf, and put the phone down. And immediately this Japanese lady, who wasn't yet a Christian, absolutely landed on me, and she said, "How is it? You've got a difficult situation." I could hear what one half of the phone call. "How is it you've got peace? Where'd you get that peace from?" And she went on and on, didn't she?
She did.
And I didn't feel particularly peaceful, because it meant that I had quite a lot to do to help in this situation. But I said to her, "Look, I don't feel particularly peaceful at the moment, but I know that if I have peace, it's because I've got the Prince of Peace living in me." And really, that was the start of amazing conversations during the weekend. I mean, these other girls had witnessed to her and talked to her, but she came to church on the Sunday morning and spent most of the morning in tears. And she came out and she said to me, "Why on earth am I crying like this?" And I said, "Because you're feeling the love of God, you're feeling the presence of the Holy Spirit, and He wants to give you peace." And later on, before she left us, she was
prayed with her,
and she received Jesus.
And we met her some years later, and she's still going strong in faith. So it's very encouraging.
But I want to say to you that you carry the Prince of Peace. So do I. And the world we're living in at the moment, with so little joy and so much trouble and sorrow and so much hatred around, peace is actually a very unusual, very precious, very, very wonderful thing to carry. And yet I realise that it's so easy to lose that peace because you're not really connecting with Jesus. The other thing that I have written about in the Word for the Week, in the written part, is that when I was 11, I got saved. I was at boarding school, and some of you know this story. But I didn't know how to pray. The only thing I knew was the sort of Lord's Prayer off by heart sort of thing. And so I said to the senior mistress who had been talking to me, I said, "How do you pray?" And she put two chairs down, empty chairs side by side, and she said, "Sit in one of them." And I sat down, and then she said, "Now, look at the other chair." She said, "God, Jesus, the Holy Spirit are in that chair. You can't see them because they're invisible, but you can talk to them and they will listen to you." And she said to me, "I just encourage you to sit quietly in a chair, knowing that Jesus is beside you, and tell him everything. Tell him the good, the bad, the ugly. Tell him absolutely everything, and sit there until he gives you his peace." So I started doing that when I was 11, and I've been doing it ever since. I'm not saying to you that I never lose my peace. I can, and I'm not a particularly nice person when I lose my peace. Or I have to go back and say, Jesus, I so need you, and I need to tell you what's going on, and I need to ask your advice, and give me your wisdom about this situation. And I let it all come out until that peace and that rest is restored. And I just want to remind you this morning that peace is such an amazing, visible gift that Jesus gives us. It's his last gift to us. He said, my peace I give to you. Not as the world gives, give I unto you. But let not your heart be troubled or be afraid. And then he said he was going away, but he said he would send the friend to them, we know is the Comforter, who would be with them and not ever leave them in an orphanage situation. So last week I had a lot going on. I haven't really discovered yet why I was actually restless, but I did lose my peace. And as I said, I'm not a very nice person without Jesus really taking the load. And eventually I had to realise that I had lost my place of rest and peace, and come back and do what I've just been telling you. Sit down, tip it all out on the Lord, get quiet, get my peace back. And I did.
Yeah, good. Well, I believe, as Joyce has said, that place of rest and peace is a birthright. We all lose it. Things happen. And we have our different ways of doing things. Many times I will just sit quietly and listen for a praise song to come into my heart. Very often the Lord will give a song which actually has got a whole element of peace and rest about it. But there are other times that sometimes if I'm just kind of disturbed, I actually go and cut the grass. No, you can't cut the grass all the year. But very often I just go and get the mower, cut the grass. But while I'm doing that, I'm just kind of pouring my heart out. It's not the two chairs, it's me behind a mower. And as I'm with that mower, I'm just talking to the Lord. And because you're doing something, it doesn't really require much concentration because you've done it over and over again. There's a sense that your peace and your rest can restore. So you may have other things, but don't let it get robbed. Joyce has mentioned the story and what she's written about Mary and Martha. Martha was in the kitchen. She was hassled and she was restless and she was complaining. But Mary was sitting listening to Jesus. And Jesus said, Mary has chosen the better part. And so we just need to know those, just sense this today. There's lots of going on in the world today. We just need to know that rest and peace is a birthright for everybody who knows Jesus.
And it's I told you about these Japanese people, lady, where'd you get this peace from? But you see, peace can come in the middle of trouble. And recently, I think we told you, we had some friends whose 50-year-old son went to be with Jesus. And, that's not easy to deal with. There's all the implications of that are enormous. But when they were asked to speak at a service in a church in London, they unexpectedly were asked to speak. And we listened to the recorded message on YouTube, I think.
Yeah.
And the thing that dominated the whole morning was not grief and sadness, although everybody knew that was, was there. But they didn't dwell on that. But the peace of God just shone out of both of them.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Absolutely amazing. And I'm sure everybody was saying, how on earth did they get that peace? How could they be so peaceful? And it's a tremendous tool of witness to say, well, it's supernatural. It's Jesus. So make sure you're living in a place of peace.
Yeah.
And if you've lost it, forgive yourself, get God to forgive you, and move on.